To go back to the beginning, I was still in college in Chicago. I was finishing up my bachelor's and I was looking for a full-time job because I was supporting myself. Really, I found a job as an administrative assistant because my goal was to be an office manager, like operations person. My goal was never to be a recruiter or an HR specialist, even though I was at that time I was still undecided in my degree. It was business administration, but like nothing specific. So I was interviewing for this job. They ended up doing this weird thing where they had two candidates, me and one other person, and whoever picked first, that's the person they offered. It was really terrible because I called them back and they're like, oh yeah, we made the offer to the other person. And I was like, you called me 3 times. You called me 3 times to like tell me that you made the offer to them. Anyways, it was weird. But then they referred me to this other company that was looking for an administrative assistant. And after interviewing with them, they said, we really need an HR generalist that will do all of these things. And I'm like, I'm happy to learn new skills. So I ended up there. And it was a very small home healthcare company. Loved the staffing side of it. Like, didn't really like, I like paperwork, right? Like, I'm a weirdo. I like paperwork. Most recruiters don't. And there are days when all I want to do is paperwork. And then there are days when all I want to do is source. So I love the staffing aspect of it and the back end paperwork of it. And then I was also working at PF Chang's as a server at that time. And they let me go with a severance. So I don't know what you would call that. They didn't fire me, but they let me go with a severance. I finished, like, it was the last year of my degree, or like the last 2 quarters of my degree, finished my degree while I was serving full-time at PF Chang's. And then got done with my degree. I'm trying to like collect my thoughts to figure this out. Got done with my degree, was looking for a job as a full-time recruiter because I fell in love with the HR side and the recruiting side. And then my boyfriend at the time we were looking for jobs in warmer places because Chicago is very cold and we're not cold weather people. So he found a job in Phoenix and he's like, and we'd only been dating for like less than a year. And he's like, do you want to move to Arizona with me? And I was like, I have no job, like, there are no prospects, like nothing is happening. Why not? So I packed everything up, moved to Arizona with him, with no job. I transferred from one PF Chang's to another in Scottsdale, and then started looking for a job. Posted my resume on Monster and Career Builder, which were big those days, on Indeed and all of that. And Robert Half called me and they're like, we would like to interview you. They wanted to outplace me as a candidate. But they had these signs that they were looking for recruiters. And I'm like, I'm interested because that's what I want to do. And they're like, oh, we're not actively looking for anybody on our team. But then a day later, they called me and they're like, we have this temporary internal recruiter position. And I'm like, perfect. And they're like, what are you looking for salary? We negotiated salary. And so I started the temp work. I started as a temp sourcer for them. And then within a month, I had multiple offers from multiple teams for a full-time recruiter position. And when their technology team was like, we need a junior technical recruiter, I was like, that's what I want to do. And my boss at the time, Evan, he's like, are you sure? I'm like, I love technology. You have no idea. I love technology. And he's like, okay, like, I'm happy to facilitate, but like, they have high quotas, but they also get, high margins and whatnot. I'm like, I just want to talk. If they want to have me, like, I want to go there. So I met with the manager, got the job, got promoted a couple times. So I went from technical recruiter to a salesperson, which is technically in their brain of promotion, from sales to senior technical recruiter. And then I was trying to get drive time as a customer, but the manager, the talent acquisition manager there, was like, hey, we're looking for a recruiter. Do you want to come work for a technical recruiter? Do you want to come work for us? And I went and interviewed, had no reason to leave Robert Half because I was doing really well. I was on track to be one of the top performers and all of that. And they made an offer, and I was like, I wanted to do corporate recruiting, so I just ended up doing corporate recruiting. So I ended up at Drive Time. No reason to leave there. Loved the company. It was great. I was learning a lot. They ended up laying people off due to some things that happened that I'm not fully aware of. They laid off like about 600 people, and they're about a 5,000 people company. So quite like over 10% of their staff. Then I went to a place called Codigo, which now, do you know WazU? I don't know, like in Arizona, it's a coding boot camp that is Steve Wozniak's coding boot camp. Essentially, that's the whole shtick. That Steve Wozniak invested, the creator of Apple has a coding boot camp. That's the whole shtick. So I ended up working for them. The person that hired me, who was my boss, was great. She understood how staffing worked and all of that. So I went back to the staffing side of things and the agency side of things. But then they hired somebody that didn't know how technical staffing worked, and him and I just butted heads a lot. So when that happened, I resigned myself. I'm like, gonna give my 2 years and then I'm gonna find another job. But then Phoenix staff came around and they're like, oh, we're looking for a recruiter. Like, I'm like, I'm not really looking. And they're like, oh, just come interview. And so I went and interviewed with them. They made me an offer I couldn't refuse. And the person, Alan, who would be my boss, was amazing. So I'm like, I have a terrible boss. Like, I'm gonna leave this. I need my sense of peace. So I ended up working for Phoenix staff for about almost 2 years. And at that point, I told Alan, I'm like, I think I need to leave the staffing world. And he's like, okay. I'm like, yeah, I think I want to grow, and I can't grow the way I want to grow here. And he's like, yeah. And I told him exactly how I wanted to grow. And he's like, yeah, you can't. And while I was at Codigo, I started my blog, and I started blogging on LinkedIn. Just took off. Like, it just absolutely took off. And I was like, oh my God, people actually want to hear what I have to say. Cool. And I got so many people that told me I was wrong, that told me I didn't know what I was talking about. They knew better because they had worked 10 years ago in a small firm as a operations manager, and part of their job was HR. So they knew better than me. Of course they did. So it was great. It was wonderful. And then I was at, that's how I ended up at StrongMind, because StrongMind was a client of Phoenix staff. So I was at StrongMind for about almost 2 years. Actually, next month is my 2-year anniversary. So, and then my old boss from Drive Time, Mona, she was hired after I was hired. She's been with MST Solutions for almost 2 years now. And she's like, hey, we're looking for a recruiter. I'm like, okay, I'll see who I know. And she's like, no, we want you. Not in those exact words, but she's more like, subtle, more subtler than that. So she's like, why don't you just come interview? And she knew that I was struggling with my boss at StrongMind. And she's like, I'm like, no, I don't know. Let me think about it. And she's like, I said no so many times. And she's like, just interview with us. So we had a discussion, and I interviewed, and yeah, it just made sense. So that's how I'm at MST. So that's my work career, but I've been blogging since 2016, 2017. Yeah, so. So I would say my advice for job seeker has been consistent over the years, is to network and apply, or apply and network. Because and also not send hundreds of applications. Like, when you send hundreds of applications, it's like going on Tinder and swiping left and right. You'll get somebody, but like 100, like swiping that much is not helpful. Like, you're just easy applying, and like you're just utilizing that. Apply to 5 to 15 of the jobs that you are really passionate about, that really match your skill set, and then go from there. So my advice over the years hasn't changed, because job seekers are still doing this. they're still applying hundreds of places. And the second piece of advice is that don't expect that a company, just because we're in COVID, is going to be remote. Because there are factors involved in a company being able to support a remote employee in the United States that job seekers don't understand, that are back-end finance and HR kind of thing. So anytime so as a company, when you have a remote employee, the HR department and the finance department has to register the business in that state. And that costs money. Can they afford it? Some of them can, but not all of them. Not all of them, right? A small organization that has 10 people might not be able to afford that. They have to register, they have to pay taxes, and different states have different nuances, because some states you need a business license, others you don't need a business license. You have to file for unemployment insurance, and you have to file for all of that. So there are a lot of things that happen in the back end that we don't know about as employees, that hinder a company's ability to make you a remote employee for themselves. I suck at this question because I don't know the trends, right? I don't pay enough attention, and this is on me. I don't pay enough attention to tell you what trends I'm seeing. I know that I'm seeing a lot more people like holistically. I think I'm seeing a lot more people wanting to work remotely, which is fair. COVID is happening everywhere, right? We're all working remotely. So I see that job seekers are working remotely. I also see that job seekers are not willing to take an offer just because they don't have a job. They're really comparing and contrasting. Like, we've had multiple people in the last, since I've been at my current company, that they're either drop out of the process because they have another offer, or they're considering multiple offers at the same time. So I know unemployment is at an all-time high, not right now, but is at a high, but that doesn't mean people are not getting multiple offers. Also, remember that when somebody's getting multiple offers, they're only taking one offer. So all of these other offers, there's still opportunities open there. So. Think about the value I'm going to add. Initially, when I started posting, I was just dumping my thoughts, right? And now I really think about how can a job seeker take what I'm saying and actually implement it? So whether it be let me look at my recent post. Like today, I made a post about diversity. Yeah, diversity is important, but how are you going to find about a company's diversity? So I list the steps. And I think I didn't make any posts. Typically, I try to not post on weekends because I'm I need my sense of sanity. The post I made before that didn't really resonate with a lot of people. And again, there were no actionable things, so it didn't resonate with a lot of people. It was about clarification. The one that I made before that had actionable pieces, bad bosses, and how does that work, and how do you suss out a bad boss, and how do you manage up a bad boss. So it had actionable things that I talked about from my experience. So I typically think about what do I want to talk about, and what actions can I give, or not give, but what actions can I suggest to a job seeker that they can use in their job search. I would say the ones that have actionable items. My audience typically, so this has been feedback given to me by people that read my posts. They like it when I have action items. What can you do? What should you do? What do you need to do? Rather than me just dumping my thoughts. Dumping my thoughts is not really helpful for them. I'm not Adam Karpiak, where I'm just posting memes. Helpful memes, but I'm posting memes. I'm also not your Austin Belchak, who is so focused. I'm how does your brain work, dude? What is happening in your brain? Can I pick it? Can we go to a lab and can I pick your brain? Because I need to know what's happening. But I have this niche where I give broad enough actionable items that anybody can utilize in their job search. They're not too detailed where they're oh, this doesn't apply to me. They're broad enough that it might apply to them. I think job seekers need to be careful about who they follow and who they take advice from. I always tell this to people when they come to me. They're like, oh, this person gave me this resume. It doesn't really work and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, and I look the person up. They've never recruited. They've never been a hiring manager. Like they haven't done enough research to know what a good resume looks like, especially when people send me functional resumes. I'm like, no recruiter likes a functional resume. No hiring manager likes a functional resume. This is I don't want to say God-given fact, but this is a general statement that I've spoken to hundreds of recruiters and hundreds of hiring managers. None of us like functional resumes. Yet, most of the time, the resumes I get are functional resumes that I have to redo. So think about who you're actually looking, gaining advice from, right? People like Sarah Johnston and Adam and myself and Amy and Kristen, we've been on the other side. Like we've recruited, we've been at the hiring manager, we know what the recruiter looks for. People like Austin, he's hired people, right? He has gotten jobs with his methodology. So that makes sense. But there are people out there, I'm like, they became a career coach because they couldn't find a job.